Good evening to all of you. So it is my privilege that I'm giving a talk and thanks the IIT Madras Alumni Association to invite me to deliver a talk to share some of my current works and whatever the technologies that were developed in IIT Madras to a open audience like IIT Alumni Association and some of the other colleagues and students were also joining these events. So before starting, so let me remind you the last talk by my colleague Dr. Prabhat, who talked about the amazing perfect liquid in a laboratory. So that is about the quark-gluon plasma. So he talked about the astronomical system, like your solar system, origin of the universe, solar system. So where the length scale is in the order of 10 to the power 26 meter, and when we talk about the time scale, it is in terms of some few billion years. And if you see in the mass scale, in the 10 to the power 30 to 10 to the power 15 kg. Where here I'm going to talk about a different system that is a completely diverse topic, that is about the nano system called two-dimensional material, where the length scale is the order of 10 to the power minus 9 meter, so that is 1 nanometer thickness, and the times the mass is order of 10 to the power minus 31 kg, the mass of the charge carrier, that is the electron. Okay, and the time scale involved in this nano system in 10 to the power minus 9, that is your nanosecond or some picosecond. I will talk about the quasi-particle electron-hole pair, where the time scale involved is very, very slow. So this is a completely diverse topic, and I will share some of the basic science what we are doing at IIT Madras, and so some of the technologically related things. So we have developed a startup company depending upon some of the application-oriented work of the study material. I will highlight it, and I will also announce some of the things, especially to the IITM alumni, if somebody will be interested to be a part of our technology development. So in the next 1 hour, I will take you a different world called two-dimensional materials and their heterostructures. So before going to this, let me remind a theoretical physicist, Professor Richard Phillips Feynman. Everybody have known about the Feynman lecture. In 1959, at APS annual meeting, so he declared, he gave a statement that there is a plenty of room at the bottom. So after 4 to 5 decades, now it becomes to the reality, and thanks to nanotechnology. Okay, and you may heard about the writer, the famous Indian writer Arundhati Roy, who write the books The God of Small Things, and which won the Booker Prize in 1997. But in this book, it deals with how the small things affect the people's behavior and their lives. So that means if you are correlate to our nanostructure system, how a small nanostructure can vary the material properties, and it will be very revolutionary in the materials world. So let's first ask the question, does size matters? So the answer is yes. So here I am giving an example. You can take a bulk silicon, which is a indirect bandgap semiconductor of bandgap 1.2 eV. So here there is a valence band and there is a conduction band and separated by a band gap. So when you shine on the light, what will happen? We can have the interband gap or interband absorption. But if you go to reducing the size of the silicon, and you can see a silicon nanoparticles or the quantum dots when the size is less than nanometer. Here you can see the continuous band gap now become the discrete, and the band gap increases. So why it is happening? Because it is due to the quantum confinement effect. I will talk to you in the following slide. If you recall in the quantum mechanics, the potential quantum well, so energy eigenvalue will be given by your pi square n square pi square divided by 8m L square. So L is your confinement term. If you reduce the size of this L, so your energy eigenvalue, this is equivalent to your change in the band gap. So I am giving another. What is interesting in this? Because here, if you shine on the light in this quantum dot, you can have two types of absorption you can get. One is your interlayer absorption, and another is your intralayer, because there is a splitting of the energy level in the interband also. So I am giving another example. called silver and gold nanoparticles have different colors depending upon the size and shape. Here you can see different size and shape of the silver and gold nanoparticles, and it's the emission. You can see it is different. It depends upon the shape and the size. So, in broadly, when we talk about the nanomaterials, we generally talk about when the size of the material is the order of few nanometer. So, it is a very vague concept. It is not a very clear concept. So, the thing is, how small is the small? So, here I am giving a cartoon of different species. If you can go down to 1 to 100 nanometer limit, this is called the nanoscale limit. That is the evolution of the nanotechnology. But this is not a realistic value, or you can talk about 1 nanometer, 10 nanometer, or 100 nanometer. But what is actually, when you talk about the nanomaterials, when it exhibits unexpected chemical and physical properties due to the quantum confinement. So what is called the quantum confinement? This is the threshold value. What have I talked to you? That is in the length scale. When you talk about the length scale, the size of this particle is the order of a de Broglie wavelength or the Bose radius. So this is around 0.5 angstrom for the hydrogen atom. So then below this threshold, there is a confinement effect, and the nanomaterials are able to exhibit unexpected chemical and physical property. So if you see this term A0, here denominator is mass. But if you take a semiconductor, what will happen? That will be replaced by effective mass, where you have taken into account the mass of the electron as well as the hole. So the exciton Bohr radius, in case of the semiconductor, that will change from one material to another material. So this value is material dependent. So we cannot see that a particular threshold, all materials show the confinement effect. So this confinement effect is material dependent also. So let's classify the nanomaterials. So there are many low dimensional systems, what we call the nanomaterials. So we can have the polycrystals like 3D. We can have your films or coat like the 2D. We can have one-dimensional carbon nanotube or fiber or a rod, or you can have your cluster, that is your 0D or quantum confinement effect. Okay. So generally, how you differentiate between a film and 2D materials? When you talk about the film, you have the finite X and Y value, and Z value is the order of some micrometer thickness, or it can go to millimeter also. But above millimeter we call as the bulk. Okay, but when your dimension of the Z-axis of the thickness you reduce to 1 atomic thickness around 0.1 nanometer, then we call it a two-dimensional material. So as a physicist, it is very always we talk about the density of states of this system. We like to stay in to see what is happening to the density of state near the Fermi level. So here you can see this is a bulk system. So in the bulk system, what will happen? The particle or the charge carrier, what we will say, so that will there's 3 degrees of freedom. You can move in x-axis, y-axis, as well as the z-axis. There is no confinement in this system. And if you do the density of state, number of states available for the unit energy, so it vary e to the power half. But when we talk about this quantum well, that is your 2D. So here the confinement is along the z direction only, and the particle is moved to free along the x and y direction, and your density of states will independent of the E. But when you're talking about one-dimensional material, the carbon nanotube, your confinement is both x-axis, y-axis, and the z-axis, and your density of state will vary e to the power minus half. But when talk about the quantum dot, so that is confinement in all the 3 directions, x direction, y direction, and z direction. And here the density of state is just like a delta function. So when you talk about the nanomaterials, at least one of the size, either x-axis or y-axis or z-axis in the Cartesian coordinate system should be in the order of nano or in the quantum confinement limit. That's why we call as the nanomaterial. Okay, now coming to the next slide. So why 2D materials is very interesting. There are many nanoscale systems like 0D, 1D, 3D. So why 2D materials is so unique? Okay, so it is the wonder material of the 21st century. It is the material of the 21st century. Okay, I can tell. This is the thinnest and the strongest material that ever exists, and it is going to impact the whole world in the coming 4 to 5 decades. Along 40 to 45 years, I'm confident that it will impact the whole world. And it is the fast grown research topic in the history of science. We can see here, I have taken from this Scopus database. Here you can see these numbers published paper for the year, because the graphene is discovered in 2004. At that time, few hundreds of articles, and then it is going to some 10,000 thousands and thousands of articles, and now you can see the trend. This is not the complete data because I have taken from the Scopus. So this data also vary, but you can see the trend in the 2D materials, how the graph is rising too fast. So it has the tremendous potential to change the whole world. It is more transformative, more revolutionary, and it's reliable. Any discovery you can see, it takes 30 to 40 years in average to come to the commercial market. But 2D is exceptional. You can see, I will show you. So after just discovery 5 to 6 years, so some of the product based on the 2D materials has already come to the market. So both many agencies like industry, academia, government agency, they all are involved here for in order to explore the basic science as well as the technological validation. And I can say the 2D will change our 3D world. So now coming to the atlas of the 2 dimensions, there is a huge class of 2-dimensional material. In general, in the layman language, when you talk about the 2D materials, it refer to a flat materials with the length and the width finite. You can example for a photographs, print and posters where no z-axis. But in this case, we are talking about some millimeter or micrometer size. But in ideal case, when you talk about the flat 2D, so you can call only finite x and y. So z is very small, that is in the order of atomic thickness. That's why you call as a 2D materials. So the first 2-dimensional material was discovered. This is a breakthrough discovery by Professor K.S. Novoselov and Andrew Game in 2004, which was published in the Science. Before this time, nobody exists that there is a such type of one-layer material exists. That's why this paper was rejected 2 times, because the reviewer does not believe that a one-layer material can exist. After lots of struggle, 2 times rejection, again they tried and it was published in Science, and that made the history. Here you can see in the case of a graphene, this is one layer of carbon atoms arranged in a honeycomb crystal-like structure. So you can see the thickness is one atom around 0.3 to 0.5 nanometer, and here the carbon-carbon bond, it is 0.14 nanometer. So these is called the first generation of 2D materials, because apart from that, many 2D materials come to the picture. I will show you one by one. So these are the following advantages of the graphene. Most of the people may know this is low resistance, high mobility, because it is confined to the one layer, there is no scattering. So Fermi velocity is very, very high. High optical transparency, because anything you can go to the one layer, light will pass. So transparency is 97.7%. It is high thermal conductivity, high hardness, 100 steel, high tensile strength, and so on. But the disadvantages is it is a zero band gap semiconductor. It is a semi-metal which cannot be switched off and on. Okay. So here you can see the electronic band structure. So this is a semi-metal. So this is the Dirac point, and the Fermi level meets at the Dirac point. And this, so this is your conduction band, and this is the valence band. In the typical semiconductor, E versus K, if you plot, will vary K square. But here it is very linear. It is E versus directly proportional to the K vector. So here the disadvantages is you cannot tune the Fermi level, because this is not a semiconductor. You cannot tune the Fermi level. Although many people have tried to doping, N-doped graphene, P-doped graphene, you can tune the Fermi level a little bit. This is around only 200 MeV, which is very, very small. So we need other 2-dimensional materials like a semiconductor in order to change in the semiconductor industry, or in order to bring a breakthrough in the electronic industry. But other advantages as a graphene in terms of flexible and other things I will discuss later. So it is not suitable for the logistic electronics because it cannot on and off. Okay, so that's why lots of other materials come to the picture. So first class, another material is called hexagon and boron nitride. So you can replace the carbon and a nitrogen atom by boron and nitrogen. So now a semi-metal is changes to a insulator. The band gap is around 6 eV. So another class of material, which is the most exciting of the present decade, is called MX2, transition metal dichalcogenides, where I am working mostly. So M is called the transition metal and X is the chalcogen. If you take group 4 to 10, this is a transition metal, and you take the combination of sulfur, selenium, and tellurium, the chalcogenides, we have lots of combination. This is called transition metal dichalcogenides. Then similarly, you can have group 3 chalcogenides, group 4 chalcogenides, group 5 chalcogenides, which is called the topological insulator, which is a very interesting topic now. So it is inside is a insulator and its surface is a conductor. That is called a topological insulator. So this type of material, all these two type of material, is called the van der Waals material. Why? Because you can see this is a layered material. If you can compare the general semiconductor like germanium or silicon, this is just like a potato type of structure. Okay, but when you talk about the 2D material, it's just like a cabbage or a onion type of structure, layer by layer by layer structure. So you can peel it. Here you can see for a typical TMD, molybdenum disulfide. Here molybdenum atom in the middle and this is the sulfur atom, and so in plane bonding is a covalent bond, is a strong bond, but the out of plane bonding is which van der Waals force. So easily you can cleave layer by layer, layer by layer. So if you can take a bulk, you can limit to the monolayer or the few layer limit. So this is a non-layered material where there is no layer structure. It is very difficult to go to the single layer limit. Okay, so there is a paper in Nature Nanotechnology in 2018. So this is a theoretical paper. They simulate and they find they created a 2D database. You can see there are 101 something pages of supplementary information about. They talk about what are the potential exfoliated sample, exfoliated layered materials. So in the periodic table, we have 6,000 materials which can be regarded as a layer compound. You can see there is a pool of materials, as called layered materials, out of which 1036 out of 125 that could be perhaps easily exfoliable, and 789 are potentially exfoliable, and the bond energy is little stronger, so that you can apply some external force like chemical exfoliation, other things to exfoliable, and the rest are the non-exfoliable. So you can see how the varieties of material, but till yet people thought that experimentally we can go to 250 plus material experimentally we can demonstrate there. Other has to be exploited. Okay. So now coming to the two-dimensional family, this is a famous paper by Andrew Game in 2013. So graphene, when you talk about, this is a single layer of carbon atoms, but you have different graphene derivatives. Like in graphene oxide, reduced graphene, you can oxidize the graphene, you got graphene oxide. Again, you can reduce it, called the reduced graphene oxide. So there are many functional groups, many electrochemistry people, they are using it for different catalytic effect application. So hexagonal bond nitride, the fluorographene, there are many graphene family. So similarly, two-dimensional chalcogenide, what I told you in the previous slide, molybdenum disulfide, selenide, so on. So some are semiconducting, some are metallic. Okay, some are these are the layer semiconductors. So now also people are interested to explore some two-dimensional oxides. The famous visco, the superconducting material, which is also a layered structure. Okay, layered copper oxides. Now also we are working on, one of our PhD students working on two-dimensional molybdenum oxides. There are many people are working on perovskite material for solar cell and other applications. That is also the layered structure and so on. So it has diverse electronic properties of the 2D material. You can see. So it go from this is your electromagnetic spectrum. So you can see here the graphene is a zero band gap semiconductor or semi-metal. So all the way from zero band gap semiconductor to insulator, we have the two-dimensional material. This is a black phosphorus. This is a MOS2 or a TMD. So TMD is why it is interesting, but it is a semiconductor. It is a monolayer. We call it the quasi two-dimensional material, and the band gap is the order of 1 to 3 eV. So this is a potential technological range because it's in the visible range or to IR extents. That's why it has much more importance in the optoelectronic industry. So now come to the other two-dimensional materials. So there is also some elemental material we can also be 2D. For example, you can have a silicene, germanium. You can have bulk silicon, you make it to a single layer, it's called silicene. You have a germanium, you make it to germanium, because in order to make equivalent to the graphene EN, that's how we call as silicene and germanium. But these are the buccal structure. Okay, so this is the theoretical calculation paper. Nobody has achieved yet single layer silicene or germanium. So some of the Chinese group, they are claiming that they are get up to 10 to 20 layer of this silicene. But this is a buccal structure. This is not a planar structure. And as it is not a van der Waals type of material, it is very difficult to prepare in a monolayer form. So another interesting types of 2D material is called the MXene, which is discovered in 2011 by Professor Hiro Gogochi, which is a pioneer. So initially he was working in the carbon nanotube and some other type of carbon structure. In 2011, he published a paper in MXene phase. So what is MXene? If you take a transition metal carbide or nitride, you can see there is a pool of materials in this one. So it can also be made into monolayer or a few layer like 2D materials. Okay, it is called MXene. So the rise of graphene, he has made a review article, which is also getting lots of attention in the 2D material community. And Professor Hiro Gogochi came here in our department last year and he gave a talk. I had a privilege to have a cup of tea with him and some discussion about the graphene. So now coming to the synthesis of the two-dimensional materials. So there are two types of synthesis. One is called the top-down approach. You can take the bulk crystal and going to the monolayer limit. And in the bottom-up approach, you take a single layer and grow one by one. Okay. So there are many methods for the top-down approach. It's called mechanical cleavage. Whatever Professor Game and Salam they do a scotch tape and take your bulk crystal. They peel one layer by layer, and after taking so much of pain, you can end up with some single layer or monolayer. Similarly, there is a liquid phase exfoliation technique and the chemical exfoliation technique. So you can prepare this type of material by this is called the top-down approach. So the advantages is a straightforward method, it's a low cost, you can get a high quality crystal, convenient for the basic research, but the disadvantages is the size is limited and is not suitable for the limit because you can able to get maximum some micrometer size of flex. But another method is called a bottom-up approach where you can have the physical vapor deposition, chemical vapor deposition, ion intercalation. So the advantages is so you can grow a monolayer single layer by this method and you can grow up layer by layer. So this is you can get a large area up to few centimeter. People have also achieved. You can have shape control, different shape also you can control by varying the CVD parameter, and it is suitable for the industrial application. So most of this the research in the recent time for the growth of the 2D materials based on the chemical vapor deposition. But the disadvantages is not a straightforward and it is not reproducible. That means depending upon the humidity, all the process parameter, the CVD condition will change to get a quality, high quality flex. So no one has to be expert in the CVD synthesis of this 2D material. So now coming to the synthesis of graphene. So few slides I will send about the synthesis of this material because some of the people who may be interested, it will be useful for them. So for the graphene synthesis, there are many methods of mechanical cleavage, ionic bonding, is laser exfoliated photo exfoliation technique, chemical vapor deposition, epitaxy. So I will talk about some of the CVD process. So what will happen? This is the schematic of the CVD process. So what will do? First it will be the gas phase reaction, then that is the transfer to the surface because we have some carrier gas. Then it will chemical reaction will happen and it will absorb on the surface, and there will be some surface diffusion. Then there is a reabsorption, and you will find some nucleation sites and island will grow, and that is of the byproduct, desorption of the byproduct, you can get the film. So in the following slide, we will see first the CVD growth of graphene on the metal substrate. You can see the growth mechanism of the graphene, hexagon boron nitride and the TMD, there is different. So for example, this graphene mostly grow on the metal substrate. Now some people grow on insulating substrate, but the yield is very low. Why is metal substrate? Because the mechanism is very different. So mechanism either by precipitation or the surface absorption. So first see the growth of a graphene on the nickel substrate. You can first you take the nickel substrate. So then when you do in the CVD chamber, so you, the input gas is your methane gas CH4. So the CH4 dissociates with the carbon and the hydrogen or some byproduct. This carbon got diffused in the nickel side, and then it is precipitated because you can see the solubility. Solubility in the nickel and carbon, it is very, very high. So this is called the precipitation effect. Then by controlling the cooling, so you can get either a single layer graphene or multi-layer graphene. If you are doing the fast cooling process, the probability is you can avoid the effective surface precipitation, you can get the single layer graphene. But if you slowly cool, there is a chances you can get multi-layer graphene. So graphene on nickel is not a very yield, so you can get localized monolayer graphene, but most of the places you can get the multi-layer graphene. So the most reliable technique is the synthesis process is the graphene and the copper. Okay, so in the graphene and copper, what you will do? So you take a copper substrate and again take into the CVD chamber. So similarly, the carbon and CH4 dissociates at elevated temperature, more than 800. There are decomposition and surface absorption. There is no surface precipitation because the solubility is very low. Then it got to diffuse and there is some desorption. Then you will find some nucleation sites. The grain boundary acts as a nucleation sites and it starts to grow. So the carbon source here is called methane, and the metal substrate generally people use called the nickel, copper, platinum, or ruthenium. Now also people are using nickel and copper alloy. So I'll talk about Professor Ronnie Rolfe, who is the pioneer in the graphene growth, graphene and copper. So now he is trying mostly in different nickel copper alloy like 90, 10, 80, 20, 70, 30, different composition, and you have to find what is the actual growth mechanism. Okay, so another thing is the lattice mismatch is very important. What are the substrate you want to use? So that should be lattice match with that of the carbon. So here in the copper case, copper 111, there is 3.7 lattice mismatch. So lattice and nickel 111 is 1.2. So lattice mismatch is very less, so that it can grow on this one. So now coming to the CVD parameters. What do you do generally? You get a native oxide. So but when you take from the supplier, it will copper oxide, you etch it, then you have you remove the oxide layer, it is have only carbon, then you anneal it. So there is a grain growth, and then when you do in your CVD process, you can see the carbon atoms got the nucleation sites near this boundary, and when you increase the timing, so that is the covalence on the graphene domains, and you can get the single layer graphene. So the yield, the probability of getting monolayer graphene is 90 to 95% in case of graphene and the copper. So the control parameter is very important. You have to play with growth temperature, time, and the gas flow rate. So this is Professor Ronnie Rolfe, who is the center director when I was in University South Korea. Initially, he was in Texas when Texas, USA, when he published this paper Science in 2009, and this paper was a very breakthrough paper in the graphene community, which has been cited at 10,740 times so far. So this is the process parameter he used. At first time he used a high temperature process and to prepare graphene film on the copper. So as received copper looks like this color. When graphene growth on the copper in the CVD chamber, the color change. And another thing is, in order to do the characteristics of the graphene and for the other application, you have to transfer into some substrate. So we need a transfer technique. So generally, transfer technique, there is a dry transfer technique using the PDMS step. There is a wet transfer technique using the PMMA. This is a polymer. This is a very well established transfer technique. First, you take the graphene on copper foil, you spin the PMMA and let them dry. Then you use the copper, and then using the fishing technique, just on your target substrate, you have to put it and you clean the PMMA using the acetone. So then your required graphene is on the copper substrate. Then you characterize it. Then you characterize using Raman, mostly Raman spectroscopy to find whether it is single layer or multi-layer graphene. Then you proceed for its application. So one of the application here I am saying, this is the graphene as transparent conducting film. So when you talk about transparent conducting film, so it should be optically transparent and electrically conductive materials. So these are the important component of the electronic devices are in the touch screen and the photovoltaics. The mostly wide transparent conducting film is the indium tin oxide. So since last 4 decades, where people are using indium tin oxide, the disadvantage is increasing cost due to the indium scarcity, and it is sensitive to acidic and basic environment, and it is brittleless. It will break. So there are several researchers finding the way how to do the replacement of the ITO. So this curve show the different materials like ITO, zinc oxide, carbon, single wall carbon nanotube, but you can see graphene is the advantages. So graphene films are the higher P over the wide wavelength range. But what happens? So because here the famous science paper by Nair et al. In 2018, the one layer graphene film will transmit 97.5%. So transmittance is very high. Absorption is only 2.3%. So graphene film can beat ITO in terms of transmittance, but the value of the sheet resistance is typically for the single layer graphene is called 1 kilo ohm, few hundred ohm to kilo ohm. Because why you call a sheet resistance? Generally, when you talk about the electrical property of the bulk material will call about the resistivity. But here there is no surface area, okay, because there is no Z. So we call about the sheet resistance per square. Either you can take it mm square or centimeter square. This is so typical value is from Q100 to kilo ohm per square. So thus ideal intrinsic single layer graphene would beat the best ITO only in terms of transmittance. You can get the transmitter 97, but the sheet resistance is very high. For example, the sheet resistance of ITO in the order of 5 to 60 ohm per square, and transmittance is 85 to 90 ohm. And it is a thickness dependent. For different thickness, it has been reported. So what do you do to solve this problem? We have taken the approach. Two approaches we have taken. First is by doping the graphene with polymer like TEPSA. So this is a famous polymer which is doped in carbon nanotube, and mostly Professor Ali Javed group working on the TEPSA doped graphene or TEPSA doped or the TMD. So when you do TEPSA, it is just like a p dopant, and it will p dope the graphene. So and then you can have there is a decrease in the resistance, because you can the formula will be below the valence band maximum. So there is a reduction in the resistance. So TEPSA doped graphene, we are getting this 53% in the resistance. So this is another technique. This is simple technique and simple idea. What you do? You take the resistance in parallel. You have a graphene film. You can take 4-layer graphene. So what will happen? Due to the resistance in parallel, the net resistance will be decreased. So you can have the high conductivity. So in these two approaches we follow. So this is the typical graphene on the silicon oxide substrate. And ITO graphene is a flexible. We have also prepared a 3 to 4 inch graphene film. It was transferred on a flexible PET substrate. It has been shown here. This was done in National Tsinghua University, Taiwan, when I was there. So here you can see this is 2D Raman spectra, 2D by G ratio is more than 1.5. Though this confirms that it is a single layer graphene. Here you can see the transmittance. You can see there is a color contrast in the transmittance. So 4-layer graphene is showing the low value around 85 to 87% transmittance. Okay. Whereas when you see the transmittance and sheet resistance plotted has been shown. So for the doped graphene in comparison the pristine, there is no such change. But when you talk about the sheet resistance, you can see the pristine graphene going from 300 ohm per square to 90 ohm per square. But in the TEPSA doped graphene, we get 134 ohm per square. When you go to 4-layer, it go to around 40 ohm per square. So in the previous slide, you told the value is from 5 to 60 ohm per square. So now it can beat the graphene. So you can make a TEPSA 4-layer graphene with the TEPSA dope. So now we can able to beat the ITO. So we have done the flexibility test also. Transfer the graphene on the flexible PET substrate, and you can see from the bending and the recovery cycle, there is very less reduction in the resistance. This is more or less remaining same. Okay, so you can use as a flexibility. So now the application you can see here. Depending on as I told in the earlier slide, because it can use as a touch screen and also photovoltaic. This is the touch screen which has been discovered by the SKPU. This is the Samsung group. Sungwon University in Korea is called the Samsung Institute because it was sponsored by the Samsung. Most of the Korean institute also sponsored by many industry, because the industry is mostly strong there. For example, when I was working in the UNIST, which is mostly the Hyundai company, it was making all the academic complex and everything, and the government is paying to the install basis. So similarly, SKPU is mostly sponsored by the Samsung, and they made the touch screen, 30-inch graphene film touch screen. You can see discovered in 2010. So you can see the discovered graphene in 2004. Very short time they get the Nobel Prize in 2010, and the commercial market also came. Touch screen come to the market in 2010. So this very limited time, less than 1 decade, the product come to the market. So now coming to the synthesis of the TMD using the CVD. So previously we talked about the graphene and one of the application. So mostly the area what I am working about the transition metal disulfide using the CVD. So this is the typical CVD scheme. So what do we do? This your CVD chamber, we do the precursor here, and this is the selenium, tellurium or sulfur, and we are using the carrier gas as well as some redundant hydrogen, because we have to, when we are in hydrogen, we have to be very, very careful, very less amount of hydrogen. There is some typical ratio between argon to hydrogen for all the materials. And there are two processes: either direct sulfurization or selenization of the metal film. You can get some few nanometer metal film has deposited on the substrate, and you can do the sulfurization and selerization to get the required TMD. Or another way you can do the metal oxide. The both you take the powder, like tungsten oxide or molybdenum oxide, you take as the powder, and you take as this selenium and sulfur, and then by sulfurization or selenization you can get the required TMD. So this is the growth of parameter of the molybdenum diselenide. Here you can see this is the CVD profile and the growth parameter. This is a typical Raman and PL spectra. So this is the Raman, the characteristic Raman spectra of molybdenum diselenide. And you can see from the PL spectra, the value is 1.55. This is the monolayer band gap. Here you see the CVD grown plaque. This is some of the truncate shape, some are hexagonal, some are triangular shape. So imagine graphene mostly grown on the hexagonal shape, and for the TMD is mostly grown on the triangular shape due to the different surface termination, and the surface energy is minimum in the triangular state. That's why triangular flakes mostly we go for the characterization. It's the mostly highly stable state. And you can see here the typical AFM image. So the value is around 0.7 to 0.8 nanometer. This is the 3 atom, because I told you it is a passive two-dimensional material. So but this is a quantitative explanation, so that you can see whatever the material we are grown, it is a single layer thickness. This is the proof. So now we have also grown different other types of material like molybdenum disulfide. You can see here tungsten disulfide, molybdenum selenide, whatever I say, and tungsten diselenide. These are here so the ACM images. And before this COVID pandemic, we are able to grow large area molybdenum diselenide by one of our research student and project staff, who is also maybe attending this seminar. So this is the CVD grown up large area MOS2 membrane on the SiO2 substrate. This is the optical micrograph picture. So we are go around 400 to 500 micrometer flex. So our aim is to grow the wafer scale growth of these 2D materials. So another interesting property of this material, that this material so direct to indirect band gap transition. So what is this? So this is a direct band gap. You can see the E versus K diagram. So this is K to K momentum direct band gap. This is indirect band gap. But mostly for our optoelectronics application, if it is momentum direct, it is band, because you have your electron hole recombination, you have extract the electron hole or exciton dissociation. So that's why for optoelectronics application, direct band gap has much more advantages over the indirect band gap. So this material show direct band gap in the monolayer, and when it is bilayer or trilayer, there is a transition to indirect band gap. So this is the beauty of this material. Here you can see the theoretical calculation of one layer MOS2, the band gap is 1.85. When it is a bulk, you can see around 1.35. So here is also theoretical calculation of tungsten disulfide. Their band gap is close to 2 eV in the monolayer limit in the K, but when it is the bulk, it is an indirect band gap semiconductor. There is a transition from the gamma point to gamma to K point. So this is as it is a hexagonal lattice. This is the first brilliant zone of the hexagonal lattice. This is the what is called the high symmetric point. So you can calculate the electronic band structure along this high symmetric point. So here I have done this experimental graph. You can see here for a single layer, bilayer, and multi-layer WS2, where you can see that is a change in the band gap. Okay, from 2, then 1.9, and go on. So the direct band gap to indirect band gap transition. So now comes to the heterostructure. That is another interesting. So whatever you talk now, this is up to a single layer, single two-dimensional material. When you make a two different two-dimensional material and mix together, that is a hybrid structure will form, which properties will completely different that as of the individual counterparts. That is called a heterostructure. Okay, so result emerging field in the present decade. So you can made by growing this heterostructure laterally or stacked over another, just like a Lego type of structure. Okay, brick structure you can go one over another. You can prepare. So what is this? You can see. So what you can see, you can make a lateral heterojunction. This to this lateral heterojunction, you can make one layer, and then another layer is coming in substrate. And you can do the vertical. You can stack one over another. So lateral, and this is the vertical structure. When this type of structure, this is called the Van der Waals type of structure, and this is in plane structure. So there is a famous paper by Andrew Game in Nature 2019. So now you have the pool of two-dimensional matter: the graphene, hexagonal bond, nitride, MOS2, WS2. So you can have this type of LEGO type of structure you can make. This is the Van der Waals heterostructure. You can make an in-plane heterostructure like in the nanolayer paper. This is graphene. This is your hexagon bond nitride. You can also make a complex, multidimensional, both in-plane as well as the outer-plane heterostructure. But why to make a heterostructure? You should do some homework. Okay, so you have to design what you want for. You should have a defined aim. What we are going to look for? You want to explore the optical, electrical, or energy storage. Then also, when you are making a heterostructure, either you go for an in-plane or you are go for an outer plane. That decides growth temperature and growth substrate. For example, let's say you are making a graphene MOS2 for a photodetector application. What you will do? Graphene growth on metal substrate. For MOS2 is grown on the insulating substrate. So you cannot grow in situ. So what you will do? First you grow the graphene, then you transport it to on a particular substrate. Then similarly you grow MOS2 on this one, and then this has to be transported to graphene. So to make your graphene MOS2 heterostructure. Okay. So these are the different possible heterostructure you can make. And also you should have a different aim. For example, if you want to make a tunnel field effect transistor, so what you will do? You have to get two metal and separated by an insulator. So then you can make a graphene, HBN graphene type of heterostructure. You want to make a photoluminescence enhancement, so you can do a TMD on the hexagon bond nitride. So like this, you have to make. You should have a particular aim. And for example, for energy storage devices, so you have to make some metal substrate. You have to coat this material to increase your large surface area, and it can use as electro material for your electrochemistry work. For lithium-ion battery or supercapacitor, you can use like this. So now come to the synthesis of Van der Waals material. So there are different types of synthesis. As I told you, your pickup technique, there is a dry transport technique. You can just stamp the PDMS and take. There is a PM supported layer. There are many transport technique has been given in this review article. And here I am showing you MOS2 W2 heterostructure fabrication. This is Van der Waals heterostructure what I have prepared. So generally, as I told you, TMD grown on different types of insulating, like a sapphire, or you can use your silicon oxide or silicon nitride. So mostly the yield is very good on the sapphire substrate. So mostly I grow TMD on the sapphire substrate. So first I grow, this is a schematic WSC2 layer on the sapphire substrate. Then you do the PMMA coating, then dry it. Then I etch out the sapphire substrate, and then in this PMMA I clean it and it is transferred to a registered substrate like SiO2. Now you have WSC2 on the SiO2 substrate. For the heterostructure, I have the two type of transport technique. So what will happen? This is similar to the first process, but in case of silicon oxide, I will take WSC2 on SiO2, then I will do the fishing it. Then you can get the MOSC2, WSC2 on the SiO2. So you can see the two structures on the substrate. So to see the interlayer coupling between the two layers, I included another hexagonal insulator between these two to avoid the interlayer coupling between the two layers. So this is a three-step transfer process: MOSC to WSC2, and this is the HBN layer. It is published in ACS Nano. So another field is coming. It's called the twistronics. So what is interesting? You can make the heterostructure, but without going to the device also, device structure. What is beauty of this material? Why you make a heterostructure? So there is another interesting area. It's called twistronics. If you change the angle between the two layers, as a threefold symmetry, you can go from 0 to 60 degree. So you can have all different types of material. So you can change the degree of freedom. You can play with this bilayer system. So you can get the diverse optical properties. What do we expect? You expect that nothing should be changed in a layman language. If you twist the angle, what will change? Nothing will be changed. Just one layer is rotating over another. But actually, if you see, there is change in the band gap, there is change in the spatial symmetry, there is change in the interlayer distance, this is change in the interlayer coupling, exciton dynamics, interlayer charge transfer, interlayer Conan mode. So many things we can get if you do the twistronics. So this is the emerging area in the last 3 decades. Now lots of paper is coming in the Nature Communication and Nature in the area of twistronics. Okay, so this is my heterostructure. I rotate the angle between 0 to 60 degree. You can see here. This is 0 degree. And this is one bottom layer is called MOSC2, and this is the WSC2 layer. I rotate this one using the premium transfer technique. Okay, so you can see different diverse heterostructure. You can see here. So, and you can see the AFM image. Here bottom layer is MOSI2, and this is one typical FM image I am showing. Top layer is MOSI2. So you can see it's 0.8 nanometer and this is 0.7 nanometer. So it is close to the one layer and then the other layer. But you can see this is a mechanical transfer process. This is not an in situ growth. So you cannot avoid some of the bubbles and the wrinkle will be formed, localized. You cannot avoid it. Although you are annealing it to increase the coupling strength between the two layers, but it will be there, but it doesn't have the optical properties. So these are other heterostructure we can go, because our grown WS2 was very big and this MOS2 is small. So here you can see if you take a large big layer of WS2 and transfer MOS2 on this one, so you can see a diverse structure. You can have all possible angles, 0 degree, 10 degree, 15 degree, 60 degree, all these things you can get. Okay, this is a WS2 on WS2, all type of heterostructure we prepare. And now, what is interesting in the TMD-based van der Waals heterostructure? So, if you take the graphene TMD, dangling bond, so it is not so suitable to prepare this heterostructure. But if you take a TMD heterostructure, it has more advantages over the graphene TMD heterostructure, because there is sharp atomic interfaces without surface dangling bond. Dangling bond is absent in case of the TMD. No interdiffusion of the atoms and negligible lattice strength, because the lattice constant, if you see, it is around 3.15 angstrom to 3.29 angstrom, most of the TMDs in this range. So its strain is very, very less. So let's see what happening when we are making the heterostructure. So now I am talking about the concept of exciton, how the exciton is formed and how you get the photoluminescence. You consider a typical semiconductor. You have the band gap. It has the valence band. This is the conduction band. When you shine on the light, electron will go from here to here, and this electron will not stay in the conduction band. Due to the Coulomb repulsion, it will form electron and hole pair, thereby give rise to some energy, which is called as the photoluminescence. So this will form an exciton. But as it is a quasi-particle, it cannot stay there. Then it dissociates to electron hole pair after some time in the order 10 to the power 12 picosecond order. So at the TMD is a type 2 band alignment. From the semiconductor, you can see there are 3 types of band arrangement: type 1, type 2, and type 3. In the type 2 band arrangement, so the conduction band minima belongs to one layer and valence band maxima belongs to this layer. This is called the staggered band alignment. So there is a band offset. So when you shine on the light, electron will go from here to here. Similarly, electron will go to here. Due to this band offset, it will relax to here. Similarly, hole will relax here. So there is an electron and a hole pair formation in this direction, spatially indirect. This is called the interlayer exciton, where electron and hole belongs to 2 different layers. So in case of a monolayer, you can see there is an intralayer exciton. Here electron hole belongs to the same layer. Similarly for MOS2. But when you talk about the heterostructure, electron and hole belongs to different layer. This is called an intralayer exciton. So we do our sample. This is the first observation of the. Initially, there is a theoretical calculator that it will show the interlayer exciton. This is our first experimental to show the interlayer exciton. So here you can see the WSC2. This is shown in the blue color. This is the MOSC2. When you do the heterostructure in the 60-degree configuration, here you can see there is a transition. There is a large quench in the PL emission, because some of these electron hole pair they are contributed in this direction. So there is a quench, and it is obvious we should expect. And there is a low energy peak we can see. That is called the interlayer exciton. Okay, and this interlayer exciton is very sensitive to the twist angle and also the temperature, because when you go down the temperature, so then all the phonon vibration ceases, and you can have the intensity of the interlayer exciton will be very, very large. But we have done the room temperature measurement only. I will show you in the next slide how it is. And this is the first media coverage of our interlayer exciton. Okay, so this was published in SS Nano in 2017. So now you see the low frequency Raman mode. So we have done for the low frequency as well as the high frequency Raman mode. But in case you can see when the stacking is very symmetric, like 0 and close to 60 degree, we can see a shear mode, and also at other mode you can get the layer breathing mode, LBM mode. Okay, but this low frequency mode are more sensitive to the interlayer stacking and coupling. Okay, so people mostly exploring. There are many papers in the SS Nano about the low frequency made of this twisted bilayer now after 2016-17. So then we have done the PL measurement. Here you can see the PL. So this is the typical one layer, and this is the another one layer WSC2. When you're making the heterostructure, you can see there is a sharp decrease, one order of decrease in the magnitude, and there is a PL shift also. This is the first observation. There is the PL quench, there is a PL shift. Quench you can explain because some of the electron hole they generate in the interlayer combination. That's why there is a quench. Why there is a shift? There is some trion formation. There is other higher order complex. In order to exciton, there is some extra electron is added up. Okay, so that is called the trion peak. That's why there is a change in the band gap. So and another is the low energy peak. We can see there is the interlayer exciton. So close to the 0 and 60. So it has plotted as it is, and in case of 60 and 10 degree and close to the 60 degree, you can see we have multiplied by a factor of 10. Here it has been extrapolated. You can see in the close to high symmetric stacking like 0 and 10 and 50 to 60, this interlayer exciton exists, but the coupling strength we speculated at that time. The coupling strength might be decreased in this case. That's why we are not getting this one. So what happened? What is interesting if you get the interlayer exciton? What is the application? People will ask. So it is very emerging application in the case of Valleytronics material. So what is Valleytronics? So you can see when you talk about the electronics, this is the charge of an electron. When you talk about the spintronics, it's the spin degree of freedom you will take into account. But when you talk about the Valleytronics, this is the Valley degree of freedom. This is called a very good Valleytronics material. Here you can see in the hexagonal Brinell zone, the EK, it looks like this one. So that is a valence band splitting because the transition metal has a strong spin orbit coupling. And so Valley, or you call the pseudo spin. So that adds a charge carrier. So, and this lifetime, if you measure, this is a Nature Communication paper. So it was predicted that this Valley lifetime is the order of nanosecond, whereas the intralayer exciton lifetime is the picosecond. Due to the large Valley lifetime, it is good for this Valleytronics application. Now, Professor Jiadong Wu in the Washington University is mostly working on this Valleytronics material. You can get very high-cited paper from him. So now you see what is happening really. We do, with the help of our theoretical colleague, we do the band structure calculation. So you can see a famous Mori pattern. What is this one? So this is your hexagonal graphene. If you do another graphene layer, you can rotate. You can rotate out to maximum of 30 degree because it is a 6-fold symmetry. So at some commensurate angle, you can get the Mori pattern. Very beautiful butterfly pattern you can see here. This is called the Mori pattern. And in that angle, you can create your superlattice, and then you can do the band structure calculation to find all the electronic band, how it is varying. So these are the all possible twist angles in case of the graphene. And in case of TMD, so you can go also some particular, you can have commensurate and getting the Mori pattern. So you cannot calculate the electronic band structure all angle. You can see when there is a commensurate structure, you can get the Mori pattern, and that particular angle also you can create the superlattice and calculate the band structure. This is from the 0 to 60 degree. This is TMD, this is 3-fold symmetry. So now we have done the DFT calculation with the help of our theoretical colleague. Now you rotate this is schematic 0 to 60 degree. We rotate it, and here you can see the interlayer separation. What is happening in case of highly symmetric stacking 0 to 60 degree? The interlayer separation between the two layers is minimum. Here you can see 6.39 and 6.38 angstrom. Whereas in the intermediate it increases. So that is the region that is no effective charge transfer exciton which is observed in the intermediate angle. Only we can see this interlayer exciton at very close to 0 and 60 degree angle. Okay, and when we do the on hexagonal bond nitrile layer, the layer increases, layer separation increases, and I am not shown here, but we cannot get anything. We cannot get any interlayer exciton. We cannot get any coil pinching. We cannot get any peak shift also. So another technique we developed is called the PL imaging technique. In the heterostructure, very simple. In the bright field optical microscope, you can take the imaging technique using this bright field and dark field. So here you can see here the CVD grown sample. The large area is WS2, and this is your molybdenum diselenide. And we do the imaging. And here you can see the zoom version of this figure. When it is close to the 60 degree and 0 degree in this configuration, here you can see there is a large squeeze pitch. In the right hand side, you can see this is MOSC2, and this is the heterostructure at different point P1 to P5. So P5 is close to your 0 degree configuration. So there is a large squeeze. It is multiplied by a factor of 54. Okay, large squeeze, whereas and the band gap also decreases. This is plotted in the wavelength scale. Similarly, other structure here when it flows, it is low, but when it is higher angle, you can see the intensity is intermediate stage. So, using this a simple technique, we have demonstrated that the coupling strength between the two different layers. So this and also you have done with the exfoliated sample. This is MOST2 and WS2. After annealing, you can see and also do the PL imaging. There is a large contrast in the heteroscope. The PL intensity diminishes. So this work has been done with the collaboration with the father of the graphene, Professor Novoselov. So I had the privilege to work with him when I was working in Korea. He was a visiting professor. During our visit, he liked my work very much, and from there our collaboration started. We got one letter and Nature paper with him. So this is our Nature paper about the hybridized exciton. So this is another heterostructure, this MOST2 and WS2 heterostructure. When the conduction band energy level more or less same, so there is a band hybridization takes place. And then there is a split in an energy level of this hybridized band. And we can get different types of excitonic features hybridized. So we have done theoretical as well as the experimental validation. So you can see in comparison to the normal A and B exciton, you can see other type of exciton, HX1, HX2, HX, the hybridized exciton, and that has been reflected in our experimental plot of PL as well as the reflection contrast spectra. These are X1, HX1, HX2, and other things. And so this was highlighted in the Hindu business line. So we also worked on bilayer. This is about a heterostructure. We are also worked on the twisted bilayer WSE2C. So we find many very complex. So this is the neutral exciton. This is electron hole pair. So in comparison to the neutral exciton, there is extra electron is added either from the substrate or from the other layer. You can get the negative bit trion in the higher order complex. We can have bi-exciton also. Electron hole pair, bi-exciton also we can get. So for that we have studied this schematic. We have studied the twisted bilayer WSE2. So here you can see the intermediate angle. This is the high symmetric stacking configuration. This is schematic and this is the SEM images. We have done the room temperature Raman spectra. That is because when you are heterostructure, there is the PL queens. And for the high symmetric configuration, we told you we get shear mode or layer thinning mode. But when you do the temperature variation PL spectra, as you can see for the one layer and the intermediate coupling, it is more or less same. But for high sticking configuration at a very low temperature, you can see different peaks are involved. And next we deconvolute this peak, and here we can see when you deconvolute this PL peak, so many features is coming. X0 is a neutral exciton. This is the negative trion. This is the bi-exciton. Then we got the charge bi-exciton, indirect exciton, localized exciton. Many peaks we find out, and in order to, because this is the comparison with the literature, but to prove it that these are this type of excitonic features, we have done the power dependent spectrum by fitting the power law, I intensity of the PL proportional to power to the power A or the alpha. So using this alpha value, when it's close to 1, this is a neutral exciton. When it is 1.48, it's super linear, so it is negative trion. When it's close to 2, this is the bi-exciton. So this is the higher order complex. So it is very, very interesting to study the many body complex, but it has also some interesting application if you want for engineering the excitonic devices. Okay, so this is the some trion and bilayer contribution we have done. This was published in Nanophotonics recently last month. So now coming to the lateral heterostructure. So people are also using the CVD methods to prepare the lateral heterostructure to making a PN junction or PNP transistor, because some of the material are P type, N type, so you can make a PN junction or PNP transistor like that. So here Professor Lancy Lee, so now he is in TSMC. Before that he was in KAUST when he published this paper in Science. This is also draw lots of attention in the 2D community. So this is a WSU heterostructure, and then MOS2 is emerging. It's a lateral heterostructure, and this is the schematic picture. Okay, so another in 2005, Dr. Prasanna Sahu, who is now working at IIT Kharagpur, he has also different sequential. You can see different type of MOSE2, WSE2, then MOSE2, WSE2. I think one spot growth of 2-dimensional lateral heterostructure by sequential age epitexy. And this is also attention, very good attention in the 2D community. So Professor Ajayan, who is also in the pioneer in this field, so he has also grown one vertical as well as the in-plane heterostructure by controlling the temperature mostly. Here you can see the lateral, and this is the vertical heterostructure. We have also started some initial work about this MOS2 and WS2 heterostructure. You can first I grown MOSC to on sapphire and then into the WS2 chamber. Here you can see when there is a transition, this is PL mapping and Raman mapping, there is a transition from albumin surface. So MOS2 is a N-type material, this is a P-type material, you can make a PN junction diode. Okay, so that is the beauty to make this lateral heterojunction. So now you have huge potential application. So I may take some more time after 1 hour, but I will do what are the possible application of this material and some of the particular application what we are going in IIT Madras. So it is application in the solar cell, because the solar cells is what by putting the light you have to dissociate the exciton and the free carriers, and this is efficient in case of the CTMD based heterostructure. So it is a most valuable application in solar cell. You can make it what is the application in transistor, because it can mostly common transistor you are using the silicon or germanium, which is a typical 3D material. If you reduce the size of the material, if you replace this material at your channel, that is also you can get the short circuit short channel effect. To overcome the short channel effect, it is recommended that we have to use the 2D matrix as the channel material. Okay, so Professor Manish Chawla, so he is very expert on this 2D material on the transistor. He made a review paper in 2016 about the 2D materials as a field effect transistor. And mobility is very high because there is no scattering. It is a single layer. You can get high field effect mobility. So this material can be used as technological display because it is high transparency and it is flexible. You can use as a light emitting diode because you can get enhanced luminescence due to the fast recombination driven by the electric field. So you can apply for LED. Also, you can use for supercapacitor. I have not mentioned all the applications here. You can use as an energy storage device because you have a high energy surface area, there's a high conductivity, high porous. You can use as in the case of electrode material and lithium-ion battery and supercapacitor, you can increase the energy density. So I'm telling you an example. A graphene-based supercapacitor now is working in the China around 5. I don't exactly name the year which was, but after 2010. So because due to the fast charging and discharging time, this supercapacitor has been used in the bus, and you can use as a chemical sensor also, because if you take the graphene or the derivative, it has many active sites. So it can use as a sensor. It is a high surface area and a high surface sites. It can sensor application. Also, you can do the biofunctionalization. You could put the biomolecules, and then you can study the IV curves. From the change of IV curves, you can find what are changes. So you can use for biofunctionalization. So mostly for this electrochemistry, people are working on this lithium-ion battery and supercapacitor. Some bio people and chemistry people, they are working on the as a sensor and biofunctionalization. And the physics people are mostly working on the field effect transistor and optoelectronics. And the metal science people mostly working on the tribological application of this material. So depending upon the area, different people are working in this area. So now I'm giving you what are the technology what we are working. So we are working on a renewable technology using this two-dimensional material. So this is now coming to the scenario of electrical generation in India. India is a huge country on 1.38 billion population. The total market value is 110 billion US dollar, and the current installed capacity is 340 gigawatt. So this is the electricity generation from data of 2018-19. You can see mostly we rely on the coal, that is the fossil fuel. 74.5% of energy coming from the coal. So the issue with the fossil fuel, everybody knows, because it is a non-renewable. This is the environmental pollution, and there is carbon dioxide emission that is responsible for the global warming. So we need a renewable energy sources. So in India, we have also many renewable energy sources all over the world, as well as in India we are working. Mostly the renewable source we are using the solar system or wind. The renewable energy in India by 2020 is the 175 gigawatt, and 2030 is 500 gigawatt. And current renewable power sector is 77 gigawatt, which market value is 20 billion US dollar. So, but there is a challenges in the renewable energy, because all this renewable energy source, it is intermittency, because it is discount, you cannot available depending upon the weather and condition, it is not available. Geographical constraint, in order to make this type of plants in the large scale or pilot plant and compete the land issue. So we have come with a solution in our IIT Madras, new idea that is expected to solve this problem. So that is called, we have developed technology that is called osmosis or the blue energy using the salinity gradient. So what is the salinity gradient? So you have your sea water or salt water in one side. This is a diffusion cell. Then you can take a fresh water and a river water on the other side. You can paint a 2D membrane and make a nanopore. When there is ion transport from this to this, then you can get your electricity. Okay. So the measured output is your ionic current, and the measured power your ionic current divided by applied voltage. So there are different ways. Either you can applied voltage to make this, or you can make a pressure gradient so that through this nanopore, this ion will pass from here to here, and you can get the electricity. Okay, so this is the renewable sources. So this osmosis we can non-intermediate, you can do 24/7. It is economical, valuable, and this is not installation complexity like other renewable energy source. So what is the typical where you want to install this type of, if you make a prototype or a pilot plant where the river meets the sea. So Madras region is very, because we have the Krishna, Godavari, all these are river falling into the sea. So there is a large opportunity in the Madras region to work on this area. So this is the typical membrane with the nanopores, and this is the substrate, like SiO2 or SiO2 substrate you have, because when this will flow, it cannot withstand. There is a fouling of the ion to this one, and it may break. That's why you have some substrate. So mostly important is the insulating substrate with the low thickness is much more desirable. So you can have a silicon nitride or a SiO2 substrate. So this is a hole, and we have to transfer our nanoporous membrane onto that one, and then we install it here and do the measurement. So this is my colleague from Mechanical Engineering, Vishal Nandigona, and their collaborator. They work on this paper. They published a paper in Nature in 2016, and that was a review article in 2019, Nature Review Materials in 2019. They told that 2D materials as an emerging platform from the nanopore-based power generation. So what we did before starting our TMD, so first we commercially buy the graphene film, that is graphene on copper. We don't take the graphene out of the copper. As prepared a graphene on copper, we do the molecular dimension. Dr. Vishal has done this one. So we take a graphene size of 2 meter by 6 inch. This is graphene on copper. The pore we make around 0.5 nanometer, and thickness is 0.3 nanometer the pore. So we calculated that if you take this parameter, we can get a power density by making all the 60% pore, if you assume. So 1 megawatt power you can get. So this is a huge and tremendous potential. Okay, so we can get a 1 megawatt power in these sizes. So he has calculated using the KCl potassium concentration and the potential distribution. It is shown here. So what we do, some initial measurement we have done using this by changing the KCl with the different concentration. We can, and before that, what do? We have to make the hole. Instead of making a nano hole, we make because so there are two aspects. If you decrease the thickness of this membrane, because we are already working the 2D metal, you get a higher current, and also if you can increase the size of this pore, then you can get also the higher current. Then you can get more power. Okay, if you reduce the size of the pore, you can get a higher voltage, but the current you can do if you can get the higher pore size become larger. So using the femtosecond laser facility of my colleague Dr. Sivaram Krishnan, we prepare single pore as well as the multiple pore here. So you can then did the measurement. We can get around close to 50 milliwatt per meter square. So some few milliwatt per meter square. If you scale it up, so you can go to some kilowatt per meter square. Milliwatt per millimeter square, you can get kilowatt per the meter square. So now we are working on it one. So depending on this idea, so we have in our incubation center in IIT Madras, we have started one startup company. So that is called Blue FMA. So blue is for the sea water, and force is for force, and for movement is the acceleration. Blue FMA. And the idea is to give the solution low energy, renewable, reliable, and continuous power supply using the salinity gradient. So this is myself and Vishal are the board of director, and Professor KB is the mentor. And based on this idea, we have filed 2 patents. Okay, and one of our student, Mr. Saras Yadav, now is receiving he won the nano spar competition in in Bangalore in 2020 in this March, and he's getting this award from Professor A.K. Sood. So coming to the market strategy, so in this investment 50 lakh, we have to make a prototype development in coming 6 months, 1 year to get the 1 watt power. And if we can able to get this type of funding, we can make a pilot plant and we get a power of 1 megawatt. So for the commercialization, we are connected via IMAIU. This is a third party, which is there are many companies like Red Stock, Salt Power, and Blue Energy. This is a US company, and this is European, and this is a Korean company. So we are in connect, and we are in touch with how the development in this field. So for this, some of the private companies also interested about funding, but they need some TRL 3 or 4. After that, they will only fund. And some of the institutions like Fraunhofer Institute of Germany, they are also interested for this collaboration. And we have get some funding from the STAR scheme of the Government of India for this project. And here I am announcing that we are also welcome to the IIT Madras alumni to fund our startup and to be a part of it. So you can contact me or Dr. Vishal. You can email me, or just you can give a phone call by looking our telephone directory in IIT Madras. Then you can have a chat. So this is welcome to our IIT Madras alumni. If somebody interested to be part of this program, because this is a revolutionary technology we are building here. So now these are also most applications in the tribology. So we have also initiated some important work with my colleague in metal science engineering. So it has huge tribological application because we can get a low friction coefficient around 0.05 and 0.02, because MOS2 also looked as a solid lubricant. So if you get 0.01, then you can get a super lubricity design. Okay, so the excellent lubrication property of this material is believed to be closely related to the weak interlayer interaction, because it is a layered structure. It can easily slide one over another. I can get the lower friction coefficient. That is the key of this material. So it is called the interesting alternative to the silicon-based technology. So these are the disadvantages of the silicon, because it is a thick layer, it is rigid, it is non-transparent, it is rough interface. Advantage of it is small, flexible, transparent, and sharp interfaces. So let's take the advantages, the amazing properties of this material and makes the social life easier and faster. So you can create more friends, get information more quickly, fast communication. So I will tell that we are also working on the quantum computation application of this two dimensional material. So we have to make a single quantum single photon emission. Some of our colleagues from optics were involved, and we are also get some STAR project. Another work also we are about the Mormister memory register application using this 2D material. For different aspect we are working by different colleagues. So finally we do what to do using this metal is up to us. So this is a huge boost to the semiconductor industry. So it is realized that it will replace the silicon in the near future, and it will validate the Moore's law, because the increase of number of transistors per single chip. Here you can see the price, how the transistor is going down and the number of transistors is increasing. So 2D materials is a big boost in this case. So you can see the latest update from synthesis to application of these 2D materials. I have edited 3 books. Okay, so one is advanced in graphene research, another 2-dimensional metal synthesis, characterization and potential application, 2-dimensional material for photodetectors, and these are some of our recent publications. And there are many new journals also coming in the 2D materials as the emerging field. So this is IOP Science 2D Material 2015. There is NGP 2-dimensional material and application. These are published in 2016. There are many 2D centers in India also, around the world. Is there? There is no center in India yet. So there is a National University of Singapore Graphene Research Center for Advanced 2D Material, Cambridge Graphene Center. This is your 2DLM Center for 2-dimensional material and layer materials. So this is Center for Multidimensional Carbon Materials in the Korea, where I was working. And for this, due to the huge potential of this work and this current interest in the topic, recently we have conducted a short-term course, Physics and Application of the 2-dimensional Materials, under Quality Improvement Program, to give a flavor to the college lecturer. So these are the topics has been covered by the different speakers across the India. And so this is some of the guests from this workshop. So these are HOD, Professor Setupati. He was presenting the certificate to the participant. So this Professor Rao and Professor Ganapati also involved in this QI program. And now finally I am acknowledging these are the collaborators, and these are the internal collaborators from our department as well as other department in our IIT Madras. These are the present group members. Some are working osmosis, some are thermoelectric, some are 2D oxide materials, and these are my different groups I was working. We were coming to IIT Madras, and recently we have an imprint project, and this is supported by industry and lab and ceramic, and Reflex is interested to collaborate, and these are our funding agency from Imprint, Star, ACRB, and others. And finally, I can share in the last slide using these 2D materials. Let's come together to make our Prime Minister dream to make an Make India program and to make successful the different startup schemes. And at last, finally, I thanks all of you for your kind timing and attention. Thanks all of you. So now I will stop sharing. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I'll go to the question
section in the left side actually. Yeah.
Okay. Plastic was declared as a fascinating material when it was discovered some decades ago, but now we are all know the evil effects it has caused on the environment. So we talking too soon about the graphene being a wonderful material. Yeah, so okay, now different interesting material is coming day by day, but the thing is, once it has been reproduced some other groups, then we can rely and go forward. So plastic is different from the graphene. You can see from the graphene how it takes to a market value, to a big adventure it has taken from the discovery from 2004 to so only 10 to 15 years. So and some recent paper also mica also come to the picture, but after that it has not get citation. 2D mica people have reported. So it depends upon the material and its application, and it is reproducible or not, and its particular application. Then only we can care about this material. Okay. So what about ZNO? Okay, so Saroj Patra is talking about how ZNO. So ZNO is interesting. So now we are also starting on work on MOS2 ZNO, 2D, 3D heterostructure. People are working. We are also working. We are getting some lasing action, nano laser. We are making the ZNO. ZNO also good material, but I think it is not a 2D material, zinc oxide. So it can have 3D structure, but 2D, 3D heterostructure also you can make to get a different device application depending upon what you are interested. So another question from Sonia Devi, copper 111, what is represented? So this is what is the surface? What there are 100, 001, 111. So this is the structure what we have taken for your graphene growth. This is copper 111. Amit Kumar Thakur. Hi sir, Amrit here, and I said, can we determine the directional vibration of thermal conductivity of the graphene? Yeah, so yeah, thermal conductivity of the graphene is very high, it is 10 to the power 3 in that order. And people are exploring the in-plane vibration as well as the out-of-plane vibration. You can go to the literature, you can see there is a famous technique called micro-Raman technique. Using the Raman technique, by changing the power, by changing the laser power, there is a shift in the phonon mode. From that shift, you can model it and you can calculate the thermometry, like thermal coefficient, thermal conductivity, so many factors you can estimate using this Raman spectroscopy. So another question from Samantha Pal, could you please provide some insight into the stability and shape control of the TMDC by the CVD growth method? Which factors, parameters critically affect the two, and how control this using the CVD growth? Yeah, so CVD tricks is a very critical. So there is a famous paper in the chemistry of materials by the shape control of molybdenum disulfide. If you can mail me, I can give you the link of that paper. So with respect to different position and the flow direction, how the shape is going from the hexagonal to triangular and some truncate shape. And so mostly the things is if somebody you look on paper and do it, so it is not that it is reproducible. You have to work on it. You have to optimize the parameter. As I told you, hydrogen to argon to hydrogen ratio is very, very important in this. Some TMD you can go for APCVD, atmospheric pressure chemical vapor deposition, where the melting point of the powder is very low. But for example, if you go for tungsten diselenide, you are using tungsten oxide power, whose melting point is more than 1500 or 1700. There you cannot go the atmospheric CVD. So you have to reduce the pressure so that you're lowering the melting point. So in this case, you have to go the low pressure CVD. Okay, and another thing is the hydrogen flow also very important. So if you go the hydrogen value is very high, so that accident may occurs. Okay, so you have to lower the hydrogen flow. It should be around 1 to 30 SCCM. So you cannot go more than 30 SCCM hydrogen flow. And so similarly, the temperature, growth time, hydrogen flow. So many papers you have to review, studied, and you have to optimize your synthesis process. Okay. So another question is BNN Prasad, can we grow manufacture turbine blades in windmills? So this is not related to this talk. So sorry, you can find this. This is a completely different question. You can search the Google and you can find it. What is A and B exciton? Yeah, this is a good question. A and B exciton means I show you one of the slide. So let's say you are taking a single layer TMD. So this is momentum direct. So along the KK, you have the band. One is valence band and the conduction band. As the TMD is, strong d orbital is there. So this d orbital may couple with S. So there is strong spin orbit coupling due to this d orbital. Due to the strong spin orbit coupling, that is in order of some few hundred MeV. In terms of WSC2 is 400 MeV. But there is no such great splitting in the conduction band. So the valence band splitting will be 2. So when there is a transition from the bottom of the conduction band to the top valence band, that is called your A exciton. When there is a transition from the bottom of the conduction band to the lower of the valence band, that is called the B exciton. That's a B exciton generally in the higher energy side and the intensity is low. Saroj Kumar Patra, how exactly using software the band structure was calculated? Yeah. So there was many software. One is QuantumWise. It is very good for experimentalist. When I was Taiwan, I was using QuantumWise. But the most suitable software is the Quantum Espresso, or you can use the VASP, for the theoretical people or my colleagues they are using. VASP and Quantum Espresso you can do. So it is a very good software. You can put all the lattice parameter, all the positions, everything. So it is calculate the band structure, density of states, so phonon vibration, everything you can calculate it. You can talk with the theoretical people who are doing this calculation, they will guide you more. One is Samantha Pal. Can you also please give me insight into the how we make a vertical heterostructure by the CBD method only without exfoliated method? What are the control parameters? Yeah, whatever I show here, this is not the exfoliation method. Exfoliation method, simplest method to get the heterostructure. So that is exfoliated within the what you call optical image. So that is heterostructure assembly. There is the assembly with that one that you can exfoliate one over another. You can exfoliate one layer by then by using the microscope objective. Then you can exfoliate another layer on that one. So some of my colleagues also working on this one, vertical heterostructure exfoliated sample. Okay, but whatever I show, that is a CVD grown sample. So CVD grown sample. So you first prepare one layer. So there are dozens of flakes around there. So similarly, you grow another layer. Dozen of flakes are there. Use a PMM transfer technique, you have to each one layer and then transfer that other substrate. So that's why I made this all these out heterostructure. And then you have to annihilate the proper coupling. This is Biswara Manenkar. Has the graphene used in making structural steels? What is the effect on a Curie and upper critical temperature? Can the graphene steel be tempered? Has graphene implemented defense technology, bulletproof waste, bulletproof transparent film? Yeah, so now Tata Steel also looking for a graphene coating because some of our colleagues also have a project with Tata Steel. So you can have the coating. Okay, graphene has looked as a coating. Also, hexagon boron nitride also can be used as a very coating material. But in the graphene at elevated temperature, if you go more than 400 centigrade, it can be a graphene oxide. But the hexagon and boron nitride, if you can coat it up to 1560 at a very high elevated temperature, also it can withstand. So HBN has more advantages on the graphene by making this coating. Okay. So yeah, some of the defense application people are using on the graphene, but I'm not sure. But yes, I think some composite, ceramic, other composite which can be used in the defense application people are using, because if you are using this graphene flakes on the ceramics, you can make the graphene nanocomposite, then you can increase the mechanical properties of this material that can be used in the aerospace and other applications. Okay, Bhuvneshwar Kumar, which 2D metal suitable for high temperature, high strength material required for space? I can tell the hexagon bone nitride. It can withstand up to the high temperature and is high strength. HBN, hexagon bone nitride. Sir, can we decrease the layer thickness from 5 to 6 layer MOS to the monolayer by temperature annealing? But the other procedure to get monolayer? So there are different procedures to get the monolayer. So one is the mechanical exploration technique. Is very tricky. So depends upon how you are doing the exploration. But the probability that if you do so many number of times, you can get a monolayer or few layer. So another way is the CVD. And there are many other methods, also chemical exfoliation and other methods. By temperature annealing, what you do, generally if we are preparing in the chemical methods, there is some residue or something is happening, you do the temperature annealing, so all the residue and something will go away. But to decrease the layer thickness, another technique is called the laser induced ablation. You could use the laser and put the laser light on this one, layer by layer you can also ablate and can this one. But temperature annealing, I don't think so you can be able to, because to reduce the thickness. What is the difference between nanomaterials and polymer LED? So polymer is a different, okay. So nanomaterials is a broad concept. Every material can be a nanomaterial. It can be a semiconductor. It can be a ceramic. It can be a metal. Everything, okay. And in terms of LED, light emitting application, that means it is electroluminescence. You are giving an electric field, and how you are getting the emission. That is your electroluminescence. That's the principle of LED. Okay, so when you have a 2D material especially, and you can making a heterostructure, that is much more advantageous because the overlapping area is very, very large. So then you can get most efficient electroluminescence. Coming to the first question of Srinivas Gopal, was the question whether the graphene is biodegradable or biofriendly? Yeah, I think a biocompatible MOS2 is a very biocompatible material, and people also graphene is some to extent, but I cannot say comparably. But MOS2 is a very biocompatible, biofriendly material. I can say MOS2. What is the stability of the performance solution based on the 2D material? That depends upon the preparation, because mostly if it is oxide based materials, so it can oxidize easily. But it is a non-oxide based material. If you keep the sample in your vacuum and other things, so it will not degrade. And a solution based process, I cannot tell because I have not tried any solution process. People in electrochemistry who are using, they can help you in this question. Can you calculate PL spectra using DFT? You can calculate absorption. Absorption spectra you can calculate. So absorption and PL are more or less same. So you can calculate the absorption spectra, but PL I don't know because I am not an expert in DFT. The absorption spectra you can calculate. I have high grades. Can we fabricate heterostructure without transfer TMDC? Yes, that is in situ you can do. In situ, mostly lateral heterojunction you can do, but some people are also with the vertical heterostructure. It is possible. Ajay group also doing the heterostructure, in situ heterostructure of TMDC, not using the transfer method. PMM is transparent. How can you use that a TMDC layer is stamped on it? After that, you can etch it from the. No. I talk about PDMS. PDMS you can stamp it. There is a bulk thick layer. This is a polymer type. You can stamp it, not a PMMA. PMMA is used for the wet chemical processes. Just you can put some few layer of PMMA, let it dry, and then you etch the TMD or the copper, whatever you are using, and then the PMMA you can clean using the acetone, then you can get your required material on your substrate, or when you transfer it to certain substrate, you can get it. So dry transfer technique, PDMS. PMMA is for the chemical process, wet transfer technique. I think that is the last questions. So chat, any questions is there? No, sir.
No, sir, we don't have any questions in chat.
Chat. Okay, so now I can thanks all of you, especially the alumni and some of my colleagues and the students who are here. So I think it will be very useful. If you have any question and other things, so you can mail me or you can telephone me also for some discussion. I will be happy to answer. And especially I thanks the alumni member, and I have get the privilege to talk and share some of my works as well as some technological works with them. If they are interested, they can also contact us. Okay, thank you very much.